Now, his formal constitutional role is to chair the cabinet, advise the Governor General, and appoint ministers. As key spokesperson inside cabinet and outside, Prime Minister Dr. the Honorable Baldwin Spencer joins us today on The Journal, where we will discuss many issues relating to the development of the Twin Island state of Antigua and Barbuda. Thank you so much for joining us on this edition of The Journal.
It's a real pleasure.
Now, your position as Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, of course, there are many issues that you're dealing with. But as we open 2013, first up on most persons' mind is that of fiscal stability for Antigua and Barbuda. How do you feel, or what can you say to Antigua and Barbuda in reference to the fiscal projections for 2013?
Well, first of all, let me say how delighted I am to be participating in this particular program. 2012 was a very challenging year for Antigua and Barbuda, but I think at the end of the day, we came out of 2012 a lot better than we probably would have thought that we would have been. The prospects for 2013 are looking reasonably good. It doesn't mean that we're out of the woods by any means, but one can sense that there's fiscal stability that has emerged. Over the past 3 to 4 years, the situation has been difficult. But I think 2013 will see a resurgence of some economic activity which would assist us in growing the economy. We're beginning to see some signs. So I'm looking forward to good things in 2013 that will set us on a path that we can say that growth has returned to the economy and that things will be looking upwards from there on in.
How much growth are you talking about, possibly?
Well, it's difficult to put a percentage figure on that, but I do know that we began to see some growth, and it was projected by the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank that 2012 we would have seen a growth in the region of a little over 1% or just a little below it. So it means then that we're moving from a negative position prior to that to a positive one. So the signs are looking reasonably good going forward.
Your administration, this current administration, is on record as implementing many social programs. We've seen that in some cases persons are not benefiting as they would have liked, particularly the People's Benefit Program and others. What's your take on ensuring that these programs remain viable for Antigua and Barbuda?
Well, first of all, as far as I know, those social programs that have been the bedrock of the UPP's agenda have remained in place over the years. And despite, again, the difficult challenges that we have had in recent times, we have ensured that those programs have not been affected, because we believe that we have to, as far as that is possible and practicable, assist the elderly in our society because they've paid their dues. The young people, we have to have certain special arrangements for them, and other vulnerable members of society, so that the social programs that we have devised over the years, we have sought to ensure that whatever happens with the economy, that we try to maintain those programs. However, we recognize that with everything else, you have to tweak these programs. You have to make them better so that the delivery of these benefits do reach the individuals who are the real beneficiaries of these programs. So from time to time, you will find that there are adjustments being made, but the foundation and the fundamental aspects of the programs remain. And we are very proud of that position that we have taken from the very onset, that we regard ourselves as a people-oriented political institution. We talk about people first, and we really look at these as very important aspects of our philosophical approach to governance.
As you mentioned social programs, I'm thinking of the Social Security Scheme. Now that has found itself in major challenges. Now what's the way forward in ensuring that this remains viable? Because really it is not building on our economy.
Well, yes, clearly there are issues with respect to the Social Security scheme, but the reality is that what we're faced now is as a result of serious mismanagement of the scheme over the years. And mismanagement not so much within the operations of the scheme, but more in terms of those who were in authority, in terms of what they failed to do in ensuring that the scheme could remain viable. And what is happening now is that it's catching up with us, as with anything else. I mean, if you continue to do something that is glaringly wrong and creates a problem that would put the scheme in jeopardy, after a while, you really have to face up to it.
Is there a need then for greater accountability on the people who are responsible?
Well, I suppose so, but the fact is that was the decision of those who were in authority, that they would deduct people's monies and don't pay it into the scheme. But that's not one injury. The other injury was the fact that they raided the scheme over the years, and with interest and everything on board, we're talking now about anything in the region of $500 million. Now, the fact is, when the UPP took office, we made a conscious decision that we were not going to extract 1 cent from the Social Security scheme, and we would make every effort to make our contributions. That we were not able to fulfill totally and completely, but the current situation is that we are meeting our obligations as an employer and as a government to the Social Security scheme.
How aggressive is your government to ensuring this?
Well, I mean, we are ensuring it. I mean, from time to time, in light of what has been happening, the central government has had to find monies to pump into the Social Security scheme from time to time in order for it to be able to meet its obligations to pensioners.
To save the scheme then, are we going to see an increase in contributions?
Well, the likelihood is that we may have to do that. We may have to do a number of other things, including the possible extension of the retirement age. In fact, Antigua and Barbuda is perhaps the only Caribbean country right now that has a Social Security scheme which has the retirement age at 60.
But if the scheme finds itself in a situation where we're short of $5 million, as you've mentioned, and this $500 million, and this happens again, we're going to talk about extending this pension age again?
No. The fact is, based on our record, this could probably only happen if somebody else is in office that would have had a record of raiding the scheme and not paying their contributions. But certainly, we don't have that record as a UPP administration. So to the extent that we are in office, we will ensure that those kinds of things do not happen that would clearly put the scheme in jeopardy. So the question of asking members of the working population and the employers to contribute a bit more to the scheme is one of the things being considered. The whole question of raising the threshold is another. The whole question of extending the retirement age is another. So it's a package of things that we are looking at in order to ensure that we put the scheme on a sounder footing and that everybody, government and private employers, will make their contributions. Because also you have situations where private employers have not been living up to their obligations at all either.
If we're looking at increasing the pension age or extending that gap there as well, we're talking about the possibilities of a public sector reform. How important is this, and how do we even begin to embark on this?
Well, I mean, it's a very important aspect of governance, and the fact is that we have been making every effort over the years to address the question of public sector reform. I have to admit to you that it is not an easy exercise, and anybody who has anything to do with public sector reform anywhere would tell you that. But I think we are making some progress in that regard. It may appear to be slow, but that is the reality of the situation. After many, many years of doing certain things in a way that may not be in the best interest of the public, or the best interest of governance, or in the best interest of the country as a whole. It's not easy to effect changes, particularly when you're dealing with a wide cross-section of people who have grown up with a particular type of culture.
But will your government even embark on this or the consultations, knowing fully well that an election is just a year away?
Yes, it's a process that has been ongoing. It's not that things are not happening. You may not feel them, you may not see them immediately, but they are in fact happening. And from time to time, certain steps are being taken to effect certain changes. The wholesale aspect of it, though, you wouldn't see that now, because that calls really for a lot of hard work, a lot of examination and re-examination, and trying to determine the best approaches that we can adopt without creating major dislocations in people's lives and in how you govern the country and how you deliver services to the people of Antigua and Barbuda.
Another critical component of our economy and our public sector is that of the Antigua Public Utilities Authorities. Now, they found themselves in a serious situation in terms of cash and finances to do what needs to be done and to provide power for Antigua and Barbuda. We've seen the contracts of 2 managers being not renewed. Will this, in fact, save the APUA?
Well, clearly not. I mean, the contracts of 2 individuals not being renewed have very little to do with the real issues that confront APUA. It's much deeper than that, and I mean it's a historical situation that we're dealing with here. Fortunately for us, we have been attempting to streamline the situation as best as we can. And a lot of people may not be aware of the fact that the burden of generating power in this country, to a very large extent, rests completely and totally with APUA. For instance, the arrangements that we have with contractors that supply power to APUA, we have to meet basically the most important aspect of the generation of power, and that is fuel. And we all know what has been happening to the cost of fuel throughout the world. And there is no getting away from that. We can't do anything about that. We don't control that in any shape or form. And so those expenses are borne directly by APUA. And in addition to having to do that, we also have to, of course, pay for getting the power. And it turns out to be a very costly affair. And everybody screams about the cost of utilities in Antigua and Barbuda, which I can understand. I mean, it's very costly, but also one must appreciate that you can't do very much about the cost of fuel. And secondly, if you enter into these contractual arrangements, which I suppose at the time it was felt that that's the best option that we had available, that you have to meet the cost of it. Of course, there's clearly room for greater efficiency at APUA. There are a number of things that I believe that we should be doing, and we are in the process of examining in order to see whether or not the cost to the consumer could be adjusted. I know people have a concern about the fuel variation charge and how that tends to inflate, if you like, the cost of electricity in Antigua and Barbuda. That is something that we are looking at very, very closely to see whether or not there's a mechanism that can be found that would make it less costly to the consumers.
Apart from the consumers, we've got the business community, of course, hotels and
Absolutely.
private sector.
Absolutely.
Now, in a situation where the rates for the private sector is higher than anywhere else, this impacts the economy in one way or another. Is there anything that government is looking at doing to sort of, bridge this divide or bring some leverage?
Well, I don't know if I can accept that the cost to the commercial sector is higher than anywhere else. I can neither confirm nor deny that. What I can say, it is high, and everybody accepts this. And it's a question of looking at a methodology that will allow for us to be able to do something about that.
What would this methodology look like?
Well, the methodology, as I said to you, is to carry out a thorough audit and examination of the way we devise and determine the cost of the commodity. We may also have to look at certain situations where APU itself may be losing a lot of the power that it generates by the fact that there are lots of leakages one way or the other. And so there are a myriad of things that we will have to look at, all with the view to see to what extent we can, in fact, assist the consuming public by reducing rates. One of the things that would assist us, and this is what we were attempting to do with the acquisition, APUA acquiring its own power generation, is to use that methodology to see to what extent we are able to use that to reduce the cost. But that can't happen overnight because we don't control the majority.
So what would you like to see then? Are we looking at possibly another power generation plant for Antigua and Barbuda?
Well, I can't say yes to that immediately. What I would say that one of the things that we are looking at very seriously, because power generation is power generation, but the methods that you use would be under consideration. The whole question of alternative energy sources.
We've heard talk about this for some time, but nothing is happening more or less.
Well, things are happening. Things are in fact happening.
Like what?
You see, you don't get those kinds of things overnight. The whole question of looking at wind power, that is being examined extremely seriously. We have identified the spots where, if we go that route, where we'll be able to put these things up. Secondly, we're looking at solar energy. As a matter of fact, there is a program that we are at the verge of finalizing, where there will be a pilot project in that regard in a particular area of Antigua.
For that pilot program?
Yes, that's part of it, but I don't want to tie myself down to give you even an approximate figure. The point is that these things are being looked at extremely seriously.
Do you think there needs to be new vision to deal with this situation, possibly a change in the board at APUA, perhaps?
Well, I don't know if that particular issue means that there will have to be a change of the board. The fact is, the things are there.
Do you still have all confidence in the board?
Well, I don't see why I shouldn't. Where we think that changes are necessary, those changes will be made. As a matter of fact, we have a general concept which we will be looking at seriously in this year, is to look at all the boards and to see whether or not changes ought not to be made. So it's not something that we are unmindful of. We're looking at it. But I would say at this point that the whole issue of the boards, the commissions and whatnot to have in place is a matter that we are seeking to address, and will do so during the course of 2013.
Stick a pin there. When we come back, we'll be talking more about economic development for Antigua and Barbuda in 2013. What can be really done to improve the local economy? You're watching The Journal. I'm Sean Thomas. Stay with us. Welcome back. You're watching The Journal. In studio with us today is Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Winston Baldwin Spencer, and we're talking a lot about Antigua and Barbuda and what we're doing in terms of development, be it economy, health, and the works. Now, we've heard about new business opportunities. What's on your agenda as Prime Minister?
Well, let me put it this way. There are a number of areas that we had identified in 2012 and even before 2012 that we believe would have assisted in driving economic activity in Antigua and Barbuda, especially as it relates to small businesses, as it relates to the construction industry and things of that kind. I think we will begin to see a number of those things coming to the fore during 2013. The Construct Antigua initiative has been in place for a while, but I have to admit that it did not get off the ground as quickly and as aggressively as we would have liked.
Where would you like to see
But
it go?
no, it's going. I was about to say that is something that we had initiated in 2012, but it did not, give us the kind of robust reaction that we would have expected. But it is now settling down, and I can tell you that a number of individuals would have benefited from that Construct initiative. Now, the idea was to have assisted individuals who are constructing homes and so on. We need to extend that, and we've agreed to extend that so that businesses and others can benefit from that Construct Antigua initiative. So that would be an extension of the original concept. So that is one area. And as I said, a number of persons have been able to benefit from that program, and I'm quite sure that it will improve in 2013. We also have this arrangement in place where through the Antigua and Barbuda Development Bank, there are special concessionary loans and assistance that are being given to small businesses, be they individuals or groups, so that at least they'll be given some support. We're hoping that in 2013 more of that will be done, and that the individuals who can benefit from that will be more proactive in at least putting their ideas, their projects together, and be willing to go forward and get that assistance. Some $1 million, I think, have been earmarked for that type of program in 2013. Generally speaking, we're also hoping that a number of the projects that have been earmarked would see some light of day starting in 2013. For instance, the construction of a new building by the state insurance scheme that will be undertaken in 2013. We are also expecting that the ADAMS operation, merchant shipping, will also be doing some construction of its headquarters and things of that kind.
Any area in particular yet?
Any
area?
Oh yes, it's on Factory Road. The site has already been identified. The site is owned by ADAMS, and that is one of the projects that we're hoping to get off the ground as well in 2013. There are also some tourism projects that are in the pipeline, and we're hoping that they will in fact begin to materialize in 2013.
Given the mandate of the Antigua and Barbuda Investment Authority, do you think enough is being done to attract those quote-unquote big-time investments?
Well, there's always room for more things to be done, but I think we have to be realistic. No big-time investment is available in small, vulnerable states like Antigua and Barbuda, or anywhere in the Caribbean.
But even though, are you satisfied then?
Yeah, well, you have to be satisfied that efforts are being made. Whether these efforts will materialize into concrete success is another matter, because one has to take into consideration the backdrop against which you're operating. Investment dollars are not easy to come by. Even in developed countries today, they're having serious problems. And sometimes I get the feeling that the people of Antigua and Barbuda just feel that only in Antigua and Barbuda that we are having challenges with the economy. That is not so. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And what we have to bear in mind is that the nature of our economy is such. It is very open and it is very vulnerable. And so we have got to understand that the nature of our economy is such that when things happen in North America, in Europe, or even in some of our neighboring islands, it has an impact on us. And that is what we have seen. And we, rather than, posing all sorts of questions and saying this and that and the other, we ought to look at the situation and say, hey, I mean, despite all this, Antigua and Barbuda has not done badly at all. We are not saying that the situation is not deserving of improvement. We are not saying that, look, the situation is not one that deserves improvement. We recognize this, and everybody recognizes this. But at the same time, it is important for us to appreciate the fact that despite these difficulties, Antigua and Barbuda is not the worse off. As a matter of fact, a close examination of the situation would show you that Antigua and Barbuda has fared reasonably well. Reasonably well.
Against whom?
But anyway, in the Caribbean.
And
the world. I mean, in terms of...
How do you measure this?
You measure this by what is happening. I mean, you look at any member state of CARICOM right now, who could be said to be doing better than Antigua and Barbuda? And I don't want to use this to say that we are out there. It's not a question of saying we're better than them, because that's ridiculous. I would never use that argument. But I'm doing this to show that the kind of gloom and doom approach that some people paint of Antigua and Barbuda is not at all the case. I am not suggesting by one iota that we do not have our challenges and the challenges are not serious and we have to come to terms with them. But I'm saying at the same time that we are not the worst in the world, as some people would tend to say.
Despite vulnerability and external shocks, oftentimes we hear that the economy, of course, the effects of the economy is affecting so many things and preventing so many things from happening, even job creation. What's your view on governments and even the private sector using this as an excuse?
Well, I don't know about government using it as an excuse. I don't even think the private sector would want to use it as an excuse. We have to deal with reality. And the reality is the nature of our economy is such. Do you realize that Antigua and Barbuda is the most dependent tourism destination in the entire Caribbean? That is the nature of our economy. The backbone of our economy is in tourism. What has been happening to the tourism industry worldwide? Not only in Antigua, worldwide. And if our economy is the most heavily dependent on tourism in the region, it simply means that Antigua and Barbuda would be impacted more negatively than any other because of the very nature of our economy.
We see that various sectors or parts of the tourism industry is failing. What are we planning to do then to sort of change focus?
Failing? I don't know when you
we
say
know that
failing,
the yachting sector, they're saying that the ABST is having an adverse effect on the situation.
Well, I don't know about that.
Hotels are complaining.
Give me a break there. Our yachting sector has shown significant signs of improvement over the past several years. Of course, again, there are concerns. Nobody wants to pay taxes. Any industry or any business would prefer, or any individual would prefer not to have to pay anything. That's the nature, that's human nature. But the fact is, we have to provide certain services. We have to deliver certain things, right? And so where are we going to get the money from? There are no godfathers out there anymore. Nobody is providing grants. Antigua and Barbuda is said to be a middle-income country, so you cannot get certain concessionary loans and so on. You can't get grants and so on anymore. Those things are off the table. We have to fend for ourselves, despite the fact that we are part and parcel of all kinds of international groupings and so on. We have to fend for ourselves. And to the extent that we are able to get assistance and support from some donor agencies and from some governments, the fact of the matter is it's not like years of old. So we have to understand that, and we have to put our buckets down where we are. Yes, we would like to be in a position not to impose these things. We hear people talk about Antigua is the most heavily taxed country in the Caribbean. That is further from the truth. The examination of the situation is that it is said that you should have a tax base of about 20 to 25% of your GDP. Ours is less than that.
Based on our GDP, we noticed that many donor agencies are pulling back the type of support that they give to us. Then what are we doing to
But that's precisely what I'm saying. So we have to fend for ourselves, and we're trying to put our buckets down where we are and say to our people, well, look, we have to make a little more effort and contribution to the country by way of these taxes. What I think that people ought to be concerned about, and quite rightly so, is to ensure that these revenues are being wisely spent in their interest. And I can accept that, right? But we had no other alternative. You see, I don't want to make this interview a political one, but at the same time, it is important for me to address something. When the Antigua Labour Party decided that they were going to dispense with direct personal income tax, obviously they had to find other means to fill the gap. So a number of indirect taxes had to be introduced. But in addition to that, when they realized that they did not have the gap being filled as quickly as they would have expected, there is where the whole question of Social Security came in. And that's what they did. They went into the scheme, took the money out. They're trustees of the people's pension benefits and what sickness and whatever other benefits are there, and they decided, without putting their contributions in, because they had that serious shortfall, by virtue of them deciding to discontinue direct personal income tax, and immediately began to create a problem over the years. So I'm just pointing out to you that there are certain things that may have had good intentions at the time, but the reality has been that it has created a problem. Now, what we're saying is that we have looked at the various areas that we consider areas that we can generate revenue so that we can do certain things. People look at governments in these small island states to literally do everything for them. Now, where are we going to generate the funds? We have to look inwards to be able to do that. We have to deal with roads, we have to deal with drains, we have to deal with all sorts of things. And everybody wants to ensure that they get the best roads, proper drains, we get everything, you know, and perhaps rightly so. But, I mean...
Isn't that a responsibility of any government?
Of course it is. But it's a responsibility of every citizen to ensure that at least they support the government in being able to deliver.
But how am I going to support a government that one might say is not working for me?
What do you mean it's not working for me?
I'm not feeling the effects of, you know, the programs
What
that
do you
would have
mean you're not
implemented.
feeling the effects? I explained to you what we have been able to do for the most vulnerable in our society through our social programs. I mean, we have done a number of things to cushion the impact of the economic fallout worldwide. And anyone to suggest that the government is not doing anything
what would you
for
say,
them
though?
would not be fair. You have to look at this thing holistically in terms of what government does.
What would you say, though, to people who would have lost sight of the real impact and the intentions of these social programs then?
What I said they would have lost sight of? Well, I suppose it's a situation where the average Antiguan and Barbudan may not fully appreciate the positive impact of a number of these things, and perhaps we might not have been the best salespersons ourselves in getting the message out there and articulate it in such a way that people could fully understand and appreciate what this government has been doing over the years.
Okay. We're winding down this interview. Citizenship by investment, high on the agenda, should become law this year, 2013. The Antigua passport, quote unquote, is for sale. What can you say to the public in this regard? Some persons are of the view in certain spheres that there has not been enough consultation.
Well, I think we have consulted quite a bit on this matter. It's a tool for economic development. We are satisfied that it is not an empty sale of Antiguan and Barbudan passports. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons why the people of Antigua and Barbuda, at least some persons in Antigua and Barbuda, would be a bit hesitant to go down that road is because of a particular history that has developed in Antigua. But it developed in Antigua not officially because we weren't on a program, but the powers that be and their lackeys were able to develop a scheme that allowed Antiguan and Barbudan passports
in the wrong hands.
Get it in the wrong hands. I mean, and that's a fact. So I can understand. But this program that we are developing will be subject to the greatest degree of scrutiny. All the necessary due diligence will be put in place. We will ensure that those persons who are attracted are reputable individuals, and it's going to be based on investment for Antigua and Barbuda. It's very important for people to understand that, and that we are going to do everything in our power to ensure that it is used as an effective tool for economic development. Let me say this, even in developed countries, they use that tool to good effect. The United States of America, Canada, Austria, you can name a number of developed, even the United Kingdom. They may argue that their program is somewhat different, but the reality is that the end result is the same. It's a driver of economic activity because they recognize that one of the ways of doing this is to create this environment in which people can, in fact, benefit through the issuance of passports, through the issuance of permanent residency, through the issue of all sorts of things, and the fast tracking of companies and individuals for citizenship in a number of these countries.
You've led a team to Dubai to market Antigua and Barbuda and promote the program. Are there any investors showing interest?
Oh.
How was that?
Well, I thought our presence in Dubai was most welcomed. Surprisingly, I thought that Antigua and Barbuda is seen as a very good jurisdiction. It is felt that Antigua and Barbuda has a great deal going for it to be able to positively benefit from this program. And I can tell you that there are a number of individuals, reputable companies and investors who would like to be able to work with the government and the people of Antigua and Barbuda on this program to assist us greatly in our efforts for economic development.
What are some of the possible areas are we looking at?
All areas. Investment in tourism, investment in other areas. Also the whole question of real estate and things that we would identify, because there are different areas of the program. For instance, we're going to have, as part of that, one can contribute to a national development fund. That's one area. The whole question of direct investment into a particular project, that's another area, right? There's a charitable aspect of it as well, where I can identify certain charities and certain things can be done to facilitate certain developments in Antigua and Barbuda, which will be beneficial to the society. So I am very positive about this. The necessary research has been done. In fact, we have gone ahead and we have earmarked a generation of revenue of some $30 million for 2013 under this program. We are so confident that this thing is going to work and work positively for Antigua and Barbuda.
What gives you all this confidence?
In light of what we have been able to discern from dealing with the different individuals and companies and so on. I mean, we're constantly engaging with these people as we speak.
You are saying that there are investors waiting to come into Antigua and Barbuda?
Absolutely.
And are you sure of that? Is this something that we're using just to...
No, absolutely. I'm sure. I mean, just last evening, we had a serious discussion. These people come all the way from Dubai to be in Antigua to further the discussions. They're just waiting for this program to be launched, for them to get involved and to do a number of things to drive the economy of Antigua and Barbuda. And I also feel that some of these individuals are genuine in wanting not only to benefit from whatever is there to be benefited from, but I also get the feeling that they really want to help Antigua and Barbuda. I somehow, they feel that Antigua and Barbuda, in terms of a country, what we have, our communications network, our infrastructure, or whatever we have, they feel that Antigua and Barbuda is a good place to invest and to be able to attract the type of investors that will come via that program is what this is about. And so I feel very positive about this. I believe it is going to assist in the transformation of the economic fortunes of Antigua and Barbuda, creating jobs that we so badly need, and to do a number of things to stir economic growth in Antigua and Barbuda once again.
I don't want us to run out of time and not talk about the car park, the Sunshine Hub, and of course the public library. Neither your administration, UPP, nor the ALP has been able to finish the National Public Library.
That is quite true, and we have to plead guilty as an administration not being able to complete the public library.
I want to ask that question. Okay. Can't finish this interview and not talk about the Sunshine Hub, that car park in St. John's there, and the National Public Library. Neither the ALP or the UPP has been able to swing the doors open for the National Library. How do you feel about this as Prime Minister?
Yes, well, I am not at all comfortable or pleased about that. There have been issues surrounding that public library situation. What I can tell you at this stage is that every effort will be made to ensure that the public library is completed in 2013.
We heard that last year.
Yes, but I'm telling you now that it is going to happen. As a matter of fact, work on the completion of the library is due to start, if it hasn't already started by the time this interview is being aired. So that will certainly happen. As far as the Sunshine Hub is concerned, which is the car park plus other amenities, we have had some serious challenges with that because of the Baiko-Clicquot demise and the fact that the funding came from that source. But I'm in a position to say that we have devised a mechanism in recent times, and we're now in the process of just finalizing that, where the necessary funds would be generated from a private source that is interested in working with the government of Antigua and Barbuda to see this project through. So we're hoping that during the course of 2013 that we will see things happening. I would really wish to see that Sunshine Hub not only completed in terms of what it takes to complete it, but to operationalize it.
Are you aware of the amount of money still required to finish the Sunshine Hub?
Yes, it has been put at some um, 10, between 10 and 12 million.
Where would the money be coming from?
Well, as I said, we are devising a mechanism from a private investment group that is prepared to work with the government of Antigua and Barbuda to see this project through. Not only to find the funds to take care of completing the Sunshine Hub, but to work out a mechanism where our indebtedness to CLICO so far could be organized and managed in such a way that it doesn't create a burden for us going forward.
The medical benefit scheme too has found itself in some problems in recent times. Are we looking at possibly making the MBS an insurance scheme as opposed to just what it is?
Well, there has been talk about that possibility, and so that is something that is being looked at.
Do you think this is the way to go?
I could very well be, but that has to be properly researched. We are in the process of doing that. There's a very strong possibility that we may take it to the next level, but the scheme as itself, as it is now, is making a significant contribution to the health services, to Antigua and Barbuda, both at individual levels and at the level of institutions, so that the scheme is making its contribution and will continue to do so to the extent that we are able to expand the benefits and the program, and we have to go the route of insurance. I would hope that the people would recognize that in order to get there, the whole question of increasing the contributions would certainly be an integral part of that.
On the issue of health care in Antigua and Barbuda, your government has been one of those who have opened, refurbished, and done a lot of things in terms of the polyclinics here in Antigua and Barbuda. Of course, Mount St. John's Medical Center. How satisfied are you with the healthcare delivery? Of course, we have the health centers remodeled, and there were talks about having a GP or doctor at the health centers 24/7. This has not been happening.
Well, yes, it hasn't happened in the way that we would have envisaged, but it is work in progress. And in 2013, you would see that at least 4 clinics in different parts of the island would have been identified where they will be opened for longer hours, and also a doctor will be on hand throughout that period. And we're hoping to do that in 4 clinics throughout the island to begin with, and hopefully over time we'll be able to improve upon that. But I think generally it could be said that we have been able to have health delivery in Antigua and Barbuda improved, but there's always room for improvement. We recognize this, and that is why we are moving towards being able to do that, because it also takes the strain off of Mount St. John. As it stands now, everybody goes to Mount St. John. Even if you have a cold, you go to Mount St. John's, and then you have this backup situation where the so-called emergency section of Mount St. John is being utilized for just about everything. As soon as anyone gets a little injury or whatever, a cold, which is Mount St. John, and they come from all over the island to get to Mount St. John. Well, obviously, the idea of developing these clinics is to be able to provide certain types of services at the doorsteps of the people in the community. And so we are making every effort to do that, to put the clinics in a position where they can deliver certain types of services right there. And that will go a long way in preventing the long lines and so on at Mount St. John for every conceivable ailment that an individual has.
We had a very grand opening of a cancer treatment center in 2012, but we haven't seen any work taking place as yet.
Okay, yes, that is true. We were hoping that by now we would have seen the start of the construction or whatever it takes to get the cancer center up and running. What I can tell you is that it is still very much a work in progress, and I believe from all the indications we've had in recent times that despite a couple of the bottlenecks that would have arisen, that the Cancer Center is one of those projects that will be completed in 2013.
You're making yet another promise?
Well, it's a promise that I think will be fulfilled.
Like the car park and the public library?
Yes, what I'm saying, the public library, from all indications, will be completed in 2013. We are also hoping that we'll be able to do the completion of the works at the Sunshine Hub to allow for it to be operationalized. And we believe that we are on the road to doing that in 2013.
We're now in 2013. We've got a general elections coming up. Where is your government? How prepared are you for the next general elections?
Well, we are prepared as we can be. We recognize that the people of Antigua and Barbuda will avail themselves of the democratic process in 2014. And we believe as a government that the people of Antigua and Barbuda will do what they have to do when that time comes.
Why should the people of Antigua and Barbuda re-elect the UPP?
I don't see why not. I believe that under the circumstances, the UPP administration has delivered. We have performed. Yes, we haven't got everything right. We haven't delivered everything for everybody.
And there has been major.
But on a fair review of the situation, the UPP administration has done reasonably well, particularly in the context of the times that we're dealing with, especially during our second term in office.
Job creation is very important for everybody.
Yes, it is.
And your government is, in fact, when you were opposition, you accused the ALP of not doing proper due diligence to ensure things are done the right way, which affected one way or another that issue of job creation. Now, how important is that to you now?
Job creation?
Yes.
Of course it's important. I would like to know that every single able-bodied person who wants a job and is prepared to work gets a job.
But there are still many people without jobs.
There are many people without jobs, but I would want to think that in some instances it is not because of the lack of opportunity. Sometimes it has to do with individuals. Sometimes some individuals trying to make choices, whether they have the ability or not to perform in certain areas. They tend to choose what is there for them to do. But at the same time, I have to admit that the unemployment levels have increased.
Are you sure of that?
The unemployment levels have increased. I mean, we can't run away from that. I mean, we've looked at certain areas where you can point and say, well, look, there were certain jobs in this sector, those jobs are no longer there. Take, for instance, the financial services sector. We had a booming internet gaming sector here.
Okay. And that's why I asked you if you're sure, because I would want to be clear that you're not just saying things, but you're aware of what's happening.
Yes, of course. That was a sector that employed. We had the Stanford debacle. We had the Baiko-Clico debacle as well. All these things would have contributed to the growth in unemployment. Now, that has nothing to do with government policy. That has to do with certain things over which we had absolutely no control. But the reality
is it just simple to you because you just chuckled? Is that
in terms of what?
I mean, I realize you just chuckled just now. So is it that you're not taking it seriously because persons could misconstrue it?
No. The point I'm making is that you have to look at these things against the backdrop of reality.
Okay.
Stanford debacle, that's a major thing. It was the major employer in this country. Baiko and Clico, over $350 million as a result of the collapse of Baiko and Clico. Over $350 million were literally taken out of this economy.
Certainly.
Right? And so unemployment would have resulted as a result of that.
Finally, you hold the office of Prime Minister, but how is your constituency?
My constituency is there, of course. We would expect to get all the services and benefits that other constituencies would expect to receive, but we also recognize that these are difficult times. And so I think that my constituency is reasonably all right. Obviously, there are things there that we need to do to improve the situation, the infrastructure and other things.
A commitment
The
is
job creation is one that we have to look at. We can hope that we can assist in the process of creating more jobs for our people. But we are still trying. We've made an effort to ensure that as far as the young people who have the ability are concerned, for them to be able to get higher education.
As you mentioned, higher education. One of your hallmarks,
sir,
one of your hallmarks has to do with the more scholarships than ever before. We've got 18, I think 17 students, medical doctors coming back to Antigua next year. What's the plan?
Yes, well, the plan is to absorb them as best as we can. But the fact is that these individuals are now doctors, and therefore they have a profession. And to the extent that they may not be able, and we are not hoping that that is the case, but to the extent that they may not be absorbed in the public sector, they have the ability, now that they have a profession, to be able to make good on their profession, because everybody cannot be absorbed in the public sector. So there are opportunities in other areas. So, but we are proud of the fact that we've been able to make scholarships available to hundreds of Antiguans and Barbudans since we took office, and that's one of the things that I'm personally very, very proud of. And right now, you have hundreds of Antiguans and Barbudans in educational institutions all over the world. Compliments of the government of Antigua and Barbuda and its scholarship program. And I think that that should continue. Some people criticize us and say, well, you know, you're offering these scholarships to all these people, and you can't guarantee them jobs and so on. Well, you know, I can understand that, because you should be educating people to ensure that they're an integral part of your development, and you structure it in such a way that the extent to which scholarships are being given, that these individuals would be relevant based on their education to be part of the developmental process. That's one side of the coin. The other side of the coin, to me, and this has been my philosophy, that while that may be true, the other side suggests to me that the opportunity should always be afforded to these individuals. It's not to say, because when one gets certain things in one's head and one is capable of performing, the world is out there. And that is my philosophy, that you do not deprive individuals of the opportunity by saying that, well, you can't guarantee them a job. Well, that is the road to a possible job. The individual creating it himself or herself, or opportunities come by the way, by virtue of the fact that you have the tool that you can use.
I know we said finally, but now it's time for your final statements. The rating on your government: you've had 2 terms going into a next challenge in 2014. How would you rate your government, and your final comments?
On a score of 10, against the backdrop of the economic challenges that we have faced, not because of our doing necessarily, but because of what is happening in the world today, I would want to give the administration an 8.
Only?
Yes, I have to be fair. Okay. I mean, an 8 out of 10, which I think is a high mark under the circumstances.
And you're hoping to make up the other 2 before 2014 general elections?
Absolutely, and I believe it is quite possible for us to be able to do that. But you know, in all honesty, I do believe that based on what we've had to contend with, and how we have had to juggle with all these variables at play, that we have not been able to to get everything right, get everything done in the way that we would have wished them. But under the circumstances, we have kept the ship of state afloat, and it is really and truly moving in the right direction. We have had to make some sacrifices. We've had to put our buckets down where we are. We're beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The whole question of sustainable development, the whole question of fiscal responsibility and trying to balance our budget, trying to do things the right way, even though it may be a little painful to begin with. You have to look at the midterm and the long-term effects. We're laying a foundation for Antigua and Barbuda which we consider to be right and would place Antigua and Barbuda in a sounder and better position. Even if we are not the government of the day after 2014, I don't see why we shouldn't. And I believe the people of Antigua and Barbuda will be able to appreciate what this administration has been doing. But the point is it's not so much what is good for an election that is coming up. It is more what is good for Antigua and Barbuda. And that is where we are as an administration, and we believe that the people of Antigua and Barbuda will understand and appreciate what we're seeking to do, to lay a solid, a better foundation upon which this country can in fact grow on a sustainable basis over time.
That's all the time we've got here on The Journal. Thank you so much for being on this edition. We certainly have to invite you back because there are many, many things that we did not get a chance to touch on. But thanks a lot, Mr. Prime Minister, for joining us here.
It was a pleasure, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. We've been talking with Prime Minister Dr. Honorable Winston Baldwin Spencer on development here in Antigua and Barbuda. Of course, he is the key spokesperson for government, and so he has touched on many, many things. Stay tuned. The Journal will be with you next week with yet another edition. I'm Sean Thomas. Take care. God bless, and bye-bye.